Was I wrong for what I did? Honestly, I still don't know, and it's a question that has haunted me every day since I walked away from what I thought was my dream job. I was a teacher, but not just any teacher. For 2 incredible years, I lived a double life, a secret life, one that no one in my small, unsuspecting town, least of all my students, could have ever imagined. I was their quiet, unassuming English teacher, Miss Eleanor Vance, but to a select few, to my family, to the world I'd tried to escape, I was Princess Aurelia of Eldoria. And the moment those two worlds collided, everything I had built, everything I had protected, came crashing down. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same thing? It all started 7 years ago. I was barely out of university, filled with idealistic dreams of making a difference, of shaping young minds. But there was a massive, glittering obstacle in my path. My birthright. Eldoria isn't a country you'd find on most maps. It's a small, sovereign principality nestled in the Alps, renowned for its breathtaking landscapes, ancient traditions, and unfortunately for me, a ridiculously strict line of succession. My father, Prince Regent Theron, had ruled with a benevolent but firm hand since my grandfather's passing. As his only child, and with no male heirs in sight, I was next in line. The problem? I hated it. I hated the stifling protocol, the endless charity galas, the superficial conversations, the constant scrutiny, the complete lack of personal freedom. My life felt like a beautifully gilded cage, and all I craved was to be an ordinary person, to earn my own way, to make my own choices. My escape began subtly. During my final year at a prestigious European university, where I was ostensibly studying international relations, a suitable major for a future head of state, I secretly enrolled in education courses. I devoured texts on pedagogy, spent hours observing classrooms, and even volunteered at a local school under a false name. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly liberating. When I graduated, instead of returning to Eldoria to begin my apprenticeship in governance, I pulled off the biggest deception of my life. I had a distant, almost forgotten aunt in America, a kind woman who, bless her heart, was always a little eccentric and never paid too much attention to royal gossip. I leveraged that connection, fabricating a story about wanting to find myself, in the States, away from the pressures of European society. My father, initially furious, eventually relented, believing it was a phase, a youthful rebellion that would pass. He set up a discreet security detail and a generous allowance, under the condition that I report back regularly. I accepted, knowing full well I had no intention of returning anytime soon. I changed my name to Eleanor Vance, dyed my hair an unassuming shade of brown, bought a modest car, and moved to a small town in rural Ohio called Willow Creek. It was the antithesis of Eldoria. Quiet, friendly, and utterly devoid of paparazzi. I found a job teaching English at Willow Creek High School. From day one I loved it. I loved the smell of old books in the library, the chaotic energy of the hallways, the genuine curiosity in my students' eyes. I poured all my energy into my new life. I rented a small house with a garden, spent my weekends exploring local antique shops, and even joined a community book club. I was, for the first time in my life, truly happy. My security detail, a gruff but kind former Eldorian Special Forces officer named Marcus, blended in seamlessly as a retired history professor who loved small-town living. He lived in the house next door, a comforting, if sometimes annoying, reminder of my past. My allowance, substantial by Willow Creek standards, was carefully managed. I lived frugally, saving most of it, only splurging on books and occasionally treating my students to pizza after a successful poetry slam. My students were amazing. There was Emily, a shy girl with a brilliant mind for literature, Jake, the class clown who secretly harbored a passion for writing, and Maria, a determined young woman who dreamed of being the first in her family to go to college. They saw me as Miss Vance, their passionate, slightly quirky English teacher, who always encouraged them to think outside the box. They had no idea I spent my summers secretly attending royal summits, pretending to be on research trips for a fictional academic paper. They didn't know that the simple silver locket I always wore held the Eldorian royal crest. They certainly didn't know that my quiet life in Willow Creek was a carefully constructed facade. The biggest challenge was maintaining the lie. Every time a student asked about my family, I'd vaguely mention distant relatives in Europe. When my colleagues discussed their exotic travel plans, I'd talk about staycations or visiting national parks. It was a constant tightrope walk, but I was good at it. I had to be. My freedom depended on it. For 2 years, this delicate balance held. I found joy in grading essays, in watching a student's face light up when they finally understood a complex literary concept, in guiding them through the maze of college applications. I felt like I was finally making a real difference, something far more tangible and personally fulfilling than any royal decree could offer. Then the unthinkable happened. My father fell ill, gravely so. It was sudden, a rare autoimmune disease that rapidly incapacitated him. The Eldorian Privy Council, in a panic, invoked an ancient clause in our constitution, demanding my immediate return to assume the regency. Marcus delivered the news with a grim face, his usual stoicism shattered. He had been receiving increasingly urgent encrypted messages for weeks, but I had brushed them off, thinking they were just my father trying to cajole me back. Now there was no denying it. My time was up. I knew I had to go. My father was dying, and my country needed me. But how could I leave? How could I explain? I couldn't just vanish, leaving my students and colleagues bewildered. I couldn't tell them the truth. It would shatter their perceptions, turn their lives into a media circus, and destroy the peace I had found. I agonized over it for days, the weight of 2 worlds crushing me. I considered faking an illness, a family emergency, anything to buy myself time, to prepare them for my sudden departure. But the council was insistent. A private jet was waiting. I had 48 hours. The day I decided to tell my principal I was leaving was one of the hardest of my life. I fabricated a story about a sick relative back in Europe needing my full-time care. Principal Thompson, a kind but no-nonsense woman, was understanding but clearly disappointed. My students, when I announced my departure at the end of class, were devastated. Emily started crying. Jake, usually so boisterous, was silent. Maria looked at me with an expression of betrayal, as if I was abandoning them. Their raw, genuine sadness broke my heart. It made me question everything. Was my desire for a normal life selfish? Was I sacrificing their well-being for my own peace? So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have kept the secret and just disappeared? Or would you have risked everything and told them the truth? My departure was scheduled for a Friday afternoon, right after the final bell. I planned to slip away quietly, but fate, or perhaps karma, had other plans. That morning, a major international news network, sensing a scoop about the Eldorian succession crisis, sent a reporter to Willow Creek. How they traced me, I'll never know. Perhaps one of the Privy Council members, frustrated by my delay, leaked my location. Or perhaps Marcus, in a moment of weakness, mentioned something. I was in the middle of teaching a lesson on Shakespearean sonnets when the classroom door burst open. It wasn't Principal Thompson. It was a tall, impeccably dressed woman holding a microphone, followed by a cameraman. "Princess Aurelia?" she blurted out, her voice echoing through the stunned silence of my classroom. My blood ran cold. The students gasped. Emily's eyes widened. Jake dropped his pen. Maria looked at me, her face a mixture of shock and utter disbelief. I felt every single pair of eyes in the room pierce through me. My carefully constructed world, my ordinary life, imploded in that instant. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong person," I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. But it was too late. The reporter pressed on. "Sources confirm you are Princess Aurelia of Eldoria, next in line to the throne. Your father is gravely ill. Why are you here, teaching in a small American high school?" The cameraman's bright light felt like a spotlight exposing my deepest secret. Marcus, ever vigilant, was suddenly at the door, trying to block the reporter, but the damage was done. The whispers started, then the murmurs. "Princess? Miss Vance is a princess?" It was surreal, like a scene from a bad movie. I looked at my students, their innocent faces filled with confusion and hurt. Maria's eyes were blazing. "Miss Vance," she asked, her voice cracking, "is this true? Are you a princess? I couldn't lie anymore. The truth was out, brutally and publicly. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and met her gaze. Yes, Maria, I said, my voice gaining strength. It's true. My name is Aurelia, and I am the Princess of Eldoria. The room erupted. Questions flew at me from every direction. Why didn't you tell us? Are you really royalty? Is this why you're leaving? Principal Thompson, alerted by the commotion, arrived, her face aghast. She quickly escorted the reporter out, but the school was already abuzz. My cover was blown. My identity, my escape, my entire carefully constructed life as Eleanor Vance, was gone. I spent the rest of the day in a blur. Parents called, news vans descended on the school, and my simple Willow Creek High School became the center of an international media frenzy. I tried to explain to my students, to my colleagues, but the words felt hollow. How do you explain years of deception to people who trusted you, who looked up to you? The hardest conversation was with Maria. She confronted me after school, her eyes still red from crying. You lied to us, Miss Vance, she accused, her voice filled with pain. You always told us to be honest, to be ourselves. And you were pretending the whole time. Her words cut deeper than any tabloid headline could. I tried to explain my reasons, my desire for a normal life, my fear of the crown. But it sounded like an excuse, even to my own ears. She didn't understand, and honestly, how could she? I left Willow Creek that night, not on a quiet flight, but amidst a chaotic swirl of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. My departure was anything but discreet. I sat on the private jet, looking out at the receding lights of Willow Creek, a profound sense of loss heavy in my chest. I had achieved my dream of becoming an ordinary teacher, but the dream had shattered the moment the truth came out. My father, though weak, was relieved to see me. The transition to Regent was difficult, filled with political maneuvering and intense public scrutiny. The Eldorian press, of course, had a field day with the princess teacher scandal. Slowly, I adapted to my new role, fulfilling my duties with a sense of quiet determination. I missed Willow Creek, my students, the simplicity of my life there, with an ache that never truly faded. I often wondered what my students thought of me, if they hated me, if they understood. A few months later, I received a package. It was from Willow Creek. Inside, I found a stack of letters. They were from my students. Emily wrote about how much she missed my class and how she hoped I was okay. Jake, in his usual quirky style, included a drawing of me wearing a crown, but still holding a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. And then there was a letter from Maria. Her handwriting was neat, precise. She wrote that she was still angry, still felt betrayed, but she also acknowledged that she understood, a little, why I did what I did. She even admitted that she hoped one day I would come back and teach again. That letter, more than any royal decree or diplomatic success, brought tears to my eyes. It was a glimmer of hope, a sign that perhaps, one day, I could truly reconcile my two lives. The truth is, being a princess is a job, a duty, and one that I now embrace with a newfound understanding. But being a teacher, making a real difference in the lives of young people, that was my passion, my true calling. I still hold on to the hope that one day, I might be able to return to a classroom, even if it's not in Willow Creek. Maybe in Eldoria, I can start a new program, combining my royal duties with my love for education, perhaps teaching students that a good story, a powerful poem, can change the world, just as much as a royal decree can. So that's my story. The secret princess who wanted to be an English teacher. The girl who ran from her destiny, only for it to catch up to her in the most spectacular way possible. I'm still processing it all, still learning to navigate this incredibly complex life. Like this video if you were on my side, if you understood why I did what I did. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Do you think I made the right choices? Or was I completely wrong? I'll see you all in the next story.